You know that feeling when you're just done, not the dramatic slamming doors kind of done, the quiet one, where your emotional circuits just power down. You stop arguing, you stop expecting, you just perform. That's where we find Maya. On the outside, Maya is winning. She's the one who remembers the birthdays, who organises the team-building retreat that nobody wants, but everyone attends, who answers her partner's texts with a perfect, timely heart emoji. Her life is a series of impeccably met expectations. But if you could slip inside her nervous system, you'd hear a single repeating command times: execute the script. Asterisk. For Maya, love stopped being a feeling about 2 years ago. It became a logistics operation, a series of tasks to be completed with precision. Did she send the good morning text? Check. Did she laugh at the right point in his story? Check. Did she initiate physical contact on the prescribed nights to prevent the "are we okay" conversation? Check. And completely hollowed out. This isn't burnout. Burnout is a fire that consumed all its fuel. What Maya has is different. It's a psychological exit, a silent internal severance of the wires that connect action to emotion. She didn't fall out of love in a catastrophic fight. She times from it quietly over hundreds of days, by treating every relational need as a problem to be solved, not a connection to be felt. Her partner David notices nothing. Why would he? His needs are being met. His world is calm. He tells his friends he's so lucky to have someone so low drama. He's living in the comfortable echo of a relationship whose core has gone silent. He mistakes her impeccable performance for peace. And here is the brutal psychological twist, asterisk, asterisk. Maya isn't gaslighting him, she's gaslighting herself. Asterisk, asterisk. She has convinced her own mind that this performance times the relationship, that if she just does everything right, the feeling will eventually catch up to the action. It's a transactional theory of love, and she is both the meticulous accountant and the bankrupt company. She monitors his mood not out of empathy but threat assessment. A sigh isn't a sigh. It's a system alert. A distracted glance at his phone isn't just a glance. It's data point #347, suggesting a coming withdrawal of attention that she must preemptively offset. Her awareness is a high-definition security system scanning for deviations in a prison she built for herself. The tragedy is that she believes this is maturity, that real love is just the diligent maintenance of a shared delusion. She sees other couples fighting over real things, money, jealousy, time, and feels a smug, quiet superiority. Asterisk. Look at all that messy feeling times, she thinks. Asterisk. We've moved past that. Asterisk. They haven't moved past it. They've buried it under a mountain of flawless, soul-crushing procedure. So Maya operates day after day in a state of profound emotional loneliness, all while sharing a bed. She is the most reliable person in David's life, and a complete stranger to him. She has in every way that matters already left. She just forgot to tell her body to walk out the door. And the most dangerous part, this can work for years. Until the system encounters a variable it can't script. That variable is coming. It's not another person. It's not a crisis. It's a single stupid, mundane question from a near stranger that will slice through the performance like a scalpel. It will be asked in a fluorescent lit break room amid the smell of stale coffee and microwave popcorn. And it will threaten to collapse the entire, carefully constructed operation. Because the question won't be about David, it will be about her. A question she hasn't been asked, hasn't allowed herself to be asked in years. Asterisk, asterisk. What do you times actually want? Asterisk, asterisk. And for the first time in a long, long time, the script will have no answer. Here is part 2. The problem with building a life on a script is that you forget you're the one who wrote it. You start treating the lines as fate, the blocking as geography, the character you play as identity. The performance becomes so technically flawless, so critically acclaimed by the audience of everyday life, that the emptiness at its centre starts to feel like a kind of depth. A quiet, echoing cathedral built to honour a god you stopped believing in years ago. This is where Maya lives. In the hollow resonance of her own choices. She stopped calling it loneliness. She's rebranded it as independence. She doesn't feel disconnected from David. She's secure. The silence between them isn't a chasm, it's comfort. This is the final devastating stage of emotional gaslighting when you turn it on yourself. You become your own Karen, policing your feelings, demanding to speak to the manager of your own soul, only to dismiss every complaint as invalid. Her love for David isn't dead. It's an administrative processing. It's a form she filed long ago that's stuck in a system awaiting a stamp from a department that no longer exists. And she's too busy managing the day-to-day operations of their shared life to follow up on the ticket. Then the variable. It's a Tuesday. The break room. Leo from accounting, who is just trying to be friendly while the kettle boils. Big vacation you and David took last month, right? The photos looked amazing. You're so lucky. Maya offers the scripted line, the pleasant hum. It was perfect. We needed it. Leo leans against the counter, stirring his tea. Yeah, but was it times your times perfect? Or like the Times Couple's Guide to Perfect Times? He laughs a little awkward already, regretting the phrasing. Sorry, my therapist is always on me about that difference. Were you there? Or were you just in the photo? Annoying question. He shrugs, takes his mug and leaves. The question doesn't land like a blow. It lands like a key turning in a lock she forgot was there. Asterisk. Click. Asterisk. 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 Were you there? Or were you just in the photo? Asterisk. Asterisk. The fluorescent lights buzz. The hum becomes a roar. And in that sterile beige room, the entire architecture of her life reveals itself not as a home, but as a set. A meticulously dressed set. The vacation times was times perfect. The light was golden, the wine was crisp, the smiles were synchronized. And she remembers with a somatic clarity that buckles her knees the exact moment she saw a strange bird from their balcony, a flash of impossible blue, and turned to point it out. David was checking his watch, calculating dinner reservations. She didn't say a word. She just turned back, watched the bird vanish, and felt nothing. Not disappointment, not sadness. The absence of feeling was total. She was in the photo. She was never on the balcony. This is the plot twist, the one her security system never anticipated. Asterisk, asterisk. The prison has no warden. Asterisk, asterisk. The door isn't just unlocked. It was never closed. David isn't her jailer. He's a fellow inmate equally devoted to the routine, equally soothed by the predictability of their confinement. He likely has his own break room question waiting for him. They are two people passionately committed to a performance for an audience of one, the ghost of who they thought they were supposed to be. The realization isn't dramatic. It's a quiet systems failure, a total shutdown of the narrative. The script in her hands goes blank. What happens next isn't a fight, it's a withdrawal. Not from him, but from the role. She starts small. She stops translating her internal weather report into his preferred forecast. He sighs and she lets the sigh be times his times, sigh not her emergency. She feels a flicker of desire for the spicy noodles from the place he hates and she goes, alone. She sits at the sticky table and eats them, and the heat on her tongue feels more real than any kiss in the last 3 years. This is the psychological pivot when healing begins not with a grand feeling but with a small defiant action. The feeling will eventually catch up to the action. It's a transactional theory of the self, and for the first time, she is both the investor and the dividend. She doesn't know what she wants. But for now, it's enough to know what she doesn't want. To spend another day as a curator of a museum where all the artifacts are replicas. The loneliness inside the performance was suffocating. The loneliness outside of it, this new and terrifying space, it has air in it. It has the scent of rain and street food and possibility. It tastes like life, not a facsimile. And as she throws the empty noodle container away, she understands the final brutal truth. The most dangerous person to lie to is yourself, because you'll always believe you. The journey back to a feeling isn't a journey back to David. It's a journey back to the woman on the balcony, the one who saw the blue bird and wanted to share it. That woman is still there. She's been waiting quietly off script for the performance to end, and it just has. The predictability of their confinement was its own kind of architecture. A blueprint they had both memorized down to the last sigh, the last resigned glance. He likely had his own break room question waiting for him, a scripted line of quiet martyrdom about emotional labor. They were two people passionately committed to a performance for an audience of one, the ghost of who they thought they were supposed to be. The realization wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet systems failure, a total shutdown of the narrative. The script in her hands went blank. What happened next wasn't a fight. It was a withdrawal. Not from him, but from the asterisk asterisk role asterisk asterisk. She started small. She stopped translating her internal weather report into his preferred forecast. He would sigh a heavy, performative thing meant to pull her into his orbit, and she let the sigh be times his, times sigh not her emergency. It was a sound that existed in the room, not a command in her nervous system. She felt a flicker of desire, a pure, uncomplicated want for the spicy cumin noodles from the corner place he hated. And she went, alone. She sat at the sticky linoleum table and ate them. The heat bloomed on her tongue, a sharp, cleansing fire. It felt more real, more immediate than any scripted kiss in the last 3 years. This was the psychological pivot when healing begins not with a grand epiphanic feeling, but with a small, defiant action. The feeling would eventually catch up to the motion. It's a transactional theory of the self, and for the first time she was both the investor and the dividend. She didn't know what she wanted. Not yet. The map was still being drawn. But for now it was enough to know what she didn't want to spend another day as the chief curator of a museum, where all the artifacts were replicas. The loneliness inside the performance had been suffocating, airless. It was the silence of a sealed tomb, the loneliness outside of it, this new and terrifying space. It had air in it. Thin, cold, unfamiliar, but breathable. It carried the scent of impending rain of grease and street food of unclaimed possibility. It tasted like life, not a facsimile. And as she threw the empty noodle container away, the paper slick with oil, she understood the final brutal truth. The most dangerous person to lie to is yourself. Because you'll always believe you. You become both the gaslighter and the gaslit, a closed loop of fiction where the only casualty is your own reality. The journey back to a feeling wasn't a journey back to him. It was a journey back to the woman on the balcony. The one who saw the flash of a blue bird against a grey sky and whose first unedited impulse was wonder. That woman was still there. She'd been waiting quietly off script in the wings of her own life, waiting for the performance to end. And it just had. The curtain hadn't fallen with a crash. It had simply stopped being raised. The house lights were coming up slowly, revealing not an empty theatre but a world. She threw the container in the bin, the grease staining her fingers. It was a small physical proof. A receipt for a transaction where she was both the buyer and the thing bought. For 3 years she had been the architect of a ghost town. She'd built the facades, polished the empty windows, swept the deserted streets, and called it a relationship. She was the mayor, the sole resident, and the tourist board of a place that did not exist. Her loneliness wasn't from being alone. It was from the exhausting daily maintenance of a populated fiction. This new silence in her own apartment after the noodles was different. It wasn't the silence of held breath, of waiting for a line that would never come. It was the silence after a storm has passed. The air was scoured clean. The ordinary sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sigh of traffic weren't interruptions. They were anchors. They were real. And that's when the plot twist arrives, not from the outside, but from the deepest chamber of her own memory. It wasn't about the other woman. It wasn't about the lies she'd caught him in. Those were just symptoms. The core of the sickness was a quiet childhood bargain she'd forgotten she'd made times. If I am perfectly manageable, I will be perfectly loved. Asterisk. She had learned to edit herself into a digestible format. A low-resolution version that wouldn't buffer, wouldn't demand too much bandwidth, wouldn't crash his system. She turned her love into a non-threatening background app, running silently, draining her own battery so his interface could remain smooth and uncluttered. The betrayal wasn't his infidelity. The betrayal was her own complicity. She had handed him the script, the director's chair, and the editing suite, and then stood patiently off camera, waiting for her cue to be time's real asterisk. He was just an actor who'd walked off a set she'd built. The most profound gaslighting hadn't been his. It was the steady, insidious whisper of her own conditioning, that to be loved is to be convenient, that to be chosen is to be unchallenging. The moment of waking up isn't always a scream. Sometimes it's a slow blink, a realization that the prison isn't locked. It never was. You've just been standing so still for so long you mistook the open door for a painted wall. The woman on the balcony, the one who felt wonder she wasn't a ghost. She was the foundation. The performance had been built times over times, her, not from her, and now with the set struck, the foundation was all that remained. Solid, unadorned, waiting to be lived upon. Healing begins in the body before it reaches the mind. The heat of the noodles, the sting on her tongue, the grease on her fingers, these were somatic corrections. A nervous system reboot. Her body was speaking a simpler, truer language times. This is hot. This is salty. This is mine. Asterisk. It was a rudimentary map, but it was plotted in sensations, not stories. For the first time in years, she was receiving data from the world, not interpreting signals from him. The journey back to a feeling isn't a return, it's a relocation. You don't go back to the old neighborhood, you learn to build a new home in the raw, unzoned territory of your own presence. The loneliness that has air in it, that has street noise and the smell of rain in it, isn't an emptiness. It's capacity. It's room. And as the first cold raindrops finally hit the window, she didn't feel a thing for him. No anger, no grief, no longing. Just a quiet, spacious recognition, like looking at an artifact from a civilization she no longer understood. The performance had ended. The run was over. And she was finally unspectacularly free to go home.